I think Mandarin is an increasingly popular language to learn globally now. A lot of African students are starting to learn Mandarin in various parts of the continent over there. I do want to share a joke, and I'm sorry to everyone from the UK. You're mentioning how the English language sort of was part of a colonial history. And I actually read this meme today.
Yeah.
And it says, on an average of every 6 days in the world, a country celebrates its independence from Britain. It is the most widely celebrated holiday in the world.
But it's history, and we can't change history. But but like you said, there are a lot of people. I actually don't know how to say his name in his mother tongue, but his name, we know this guy, this badminton player. He's called An Sailong, and he speaks perfect Chinese. Like, I don't know if you, I think his English name is Victor, but oh my God, he's from Denmark. And for some reason, he never lived in China, but he just speaks very, very good Mandarin.
Wow.
Yeah, you should look him up.
Really smart.
Yeah, and he talks to his kid in Mandarin Chinese as well. I actually just watched a video of him saying like Happy Mid-Autumn Festival to Chinese people. And it's not even like he just learned how to say that to get more fans in China. He actually speaks Mandarin very, very well.
Well, I remember when I first met my wife, her mom and dad, they were constantly telling me about this like one foreigner guy who goes on TV programs and he can use multiple accents from different provinces of China. And I think the reason they were telling me that was like, hey, come on, what's with the not speaking Chinese well?
Yeah, I know. I forgot if I told this joke on the show, but I was joking about, when people say, oh, if you don't speak English, go home. I was like, I never took that, personally. I was like, it makes sense. I understand. Now that I've come back to China, I tend to say the same to my friends. And I say, speak a language we can understand. Just speak English.
This is not just me trying to compliment you. It is true. You speak very American English. I would say that your accent is more American than mine.
That's ridiculous.
Because like I try to speak in a very like bookish kind of nerdy way, and you have much more like the street kind of like, hey, what's up kind of angle to the way that you speak. So I would say if I didn't know you already and I just heard you on the phone, I would assume you were from like, California or something.
I will say that it's funny that you said that. I think my language went through different stages as well. And I think that speaks to everybody who ever tries to pick up another language. If you really put a lot of hard work into learning it, going to classes, learning from a teacher, or following the cassette tapes. Oh, sorry, following online English videos.
Who has a cassette tape?
Sorry, cassette tapes was our time, our old days. You will start speaking the language in a very formal way in the beginning.
Oh, yes. Hello, my name is Alex.
Yeah.
What is your name?
My friend Frank, who went to the States for college, came back to visit. I remember we had this conversation when we were waiting for our food at McDonald's. And he said, you sound like a news anchor. Like when you speak English, you don't sound like you're a normal person, like just having daily conversations. You sound like a news anchor.
And now cheeseburgers at McDonald's.
Yeah, I would love to have
just
a cheeseburger.
French fries. Yes.
Just in cheeseburger. But I guess after I went to the States, people were like, oh, your accent. I was like, well, I don't think my accent really changed. Is kind of the rhythm of your speaking. And I'm also very receptive and self-aware of the way I sound. So I guess I tend to pick up on a lot more. And I guess going back to where the whole conversation started, I think Tatala was probably just saying that I'm not going to consciously pay attention to how my English is, whether I say a perfect sentence, whether I make any grammatical mistakes, or whether this word is pronounced perfect or not. It's just like, as long as I could be understood, I'm not going to put any more effort into making myself sound more American.
Well, she ends up talking about the plurality of her identity. She says, quote, I speak the plurality of my identity. And that's one of her new reflections that show that she can identify as an English speaker and have an English conversation. And she can identify as a Mandarin speaker and have a Mandarin conversation. And she feels like these are not the same identity, that the language that she's using shapes her personality in that discussion. Now, for me, my Mandarin is not very good, but I can have very simple conversations when I go out. And when I'm in those very brief simple conversations, I feel like, okay, yeah, I'm not identifying as a Chinese person, but I'm identifying as an immigrant in China who's able to formulate their speech in Chinese, and it makes me feel happy, proud of myself. And then I have my English speaking identity, which just is like, me blathering about something. But you are actually fluent in English and fluent in Mandarin. And I wanted to ask you, when you're talking with other people, maybe you have other people in your life who are also fluent in English and also fluent in Chinese. And when you're talking with them, if you speak in Chinese or if you speak in English, how does that affect how and what you communicate?
I've always said that language is the presentation of what thinking is behind that language. And the thinking comes from a cultural and historical progression. So when you do pick up another language, even if it's just simple conversations, like you said, just saying, hi, how are you? What are you doing? You are speaking what this whole group of people have accumulated and evolved in the past like centuries of how they think. So it just by nature, it changes the way you think. Again, you might not be aware of it, but once you speak more language, speak a different language, the way you think, the way you look at the world definitely changes. And then as a reflection, it changes your behavior, changes your identity a little bit. For example, I tend to throw more hand gestures when I speak English. Like I tend to be more animated when I'm speaking English.
Interesting. So
I'm not like that in Chinese.
You're
I guess.
more formal or just standing there with your hands in your pockets or something?
I haven't had to make very formal speaking in Chinese. So I haven't had that, situation. I also learned this because I felt like I studied English translation and interpreting in college. So most of our presentations were done in English. And then when I went to the States, I studied broadcast journalism where I have to speak on camera. So like most of the occasions where I was needed to be formal, it was in English. So I picked up this whole, how the public speaking thing where you have to like pinch your thumb and your forefinger together, and then you kind of pump your fist close to your head and trying to make a point, and that's how you get people to pay attention to what you're saying. So I picked up all of those things. It's just as a way of learning. And now when I try to express myself and especially if I'm saying English, even at the very moment right now, if you look at me, my hands are up in the air. Like
really?
Yes.
I didn't picture you like that.
Yes, my hands are, I'm still now I'm like super self-conscious. Like
but no one can see you.
I'm waving my hands just for whatever I'm trying to say. Yeah, like right now when I'm speaking, if you could see me, both of my hands are up in the air. And if I not up in the air, I'd be kind of like, playing with my fingers and something. But if I'm having a presentation in Chinese at work, my hands will most likely not move. And it's not like I'm making conscious decisions every time before I start speaking in one language. And I'm like, this is how I'm going to present myself.
I was going to ask some other questions, but actually while you're talking, I was thinking about something. I don't have the same experience as you, but I did actually study many languages. I took 2 years of German. I took 2 years of French. I took 2 years of Hindi. I took a year of Cantonese and 1 semester of Mandarin. And I've studied Mandarin since I've been here. And I studied Korean while I was living in Korea. So I know a little bit of a lot of languages. What I notice is that sometimes in some other languages, there are words that represent an idea that doesn't fully translate easily, or it does translate, but it takes many more words. Like in
all the time. Yes.
Korean, they have a word.
Yes.
It's an utterance. It's a sound. And this means I feel very frustrated and maybe we shouldn't talk about this. But you could just say one sound. And that has a lot of information buried in it that doesn't exist in the same way in English. So I think what's interesting about maybe identity and language is that you were talking just a few minutes ago about the history of Chinese, the history of English, and how the histories of these languages play into how we communicate and the identity we assume. I think part of that is because the structure of that language facilitates particular ideas be more emphasized than others, because those are more prevalent in the way that the discourse operates. So the language forms the shape of the ideas and directs the conversation itself.
Absolutely. And it's the certain things like, for example, this is my guessing, the different ways of saying, how we say, Chinese people say, we say red sugar to mean brown sugar, right?
Yeah. And red tea is
red tea is black tea.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it could very possibly be the fact that or you could easily, if you really try to be interpretive when you look at how things are described, you could say, oh, then it's probably makes sense that red sugar is consumed as a soup. Like they put that into water because once you put brown sugar into water, the color of the soup is red. Same with tea. Like with black tea, when you put it into water, when you make it, then the color of the tea with the water in it, it's reddish. It's not black, but like it's probably used differently in other culture or whatever. And that's what the way they describe is different. Like I'm pretty sure there are a lot of things behind how same items are described in different ways in different cultures. And it tells like how people in the old days were using them or how they looked at like the ancestors or looking at different items. And that speaks to, some like, for example, maybe the weather back then was really cold and it was popular in the northern region. That's why they called it the red sugar.
We talk about Confucian values sometimes in the context of foreigners trying to understand China. In Korea, Confucius is also very popular. Their language actually reflects these degrees of respect. So if you want to say hello to an older person, you might say 안녕하세요. If you say hello to your friend, you might just be 안녕.
Yeah.
Exactly.
안녕. Yeah, I know that too.
I know Chinese people love Korean dramas.
Yes.
But you have that in Chinese too. You have ni and nin.
Yes.
So if you add the N sound at the end of ni, you end up talking in a more respectful way to maybe someone who is like
more senior
in some way, whether it be age or something else. And so it's embedded in the language. And in English, we don't have that. You have you. If you want to call someone sir or ma'am, you can, but that's a whole additional word.
Yeah.
What we're talking about is the actual word you would just use for you would be an entirely different word depending on the context. Like if I was going to meet, like, I don't know, the mayor of Beijing, I certainly would not say ni. It would definitely be ni because he would be so much more like higher in seniority to me culturally, in society.
Yeah.
So like it's embedded in the way that we actually talk in some languages. And so the shape of language. So I going back to this lady, I think it's really fascinating that she brings this issue up. Now, I don't have the same holdups as she does about like names and things.
Yeah.
But I think that her experience of it has probably been deeper and maybe in a very particular context that her own ideas resonate with her in the way that they do now.
I don't know if you saw the news. There was kind of a trend of peeling off your English name on the dorm in Colombia. A group of Chinese students. They got rid of their English name on the door and they put their Chinese names on it. And that caused a whole lot of, not debate necessarily, but definitely very heated discussions, even among Chinese people ourselves. And for me, like I said in the beginning of the show, for me, I don't think having an English name takes away my Chinese identity. And I think it's the same for other people that are from foreign countries who live in China right now. Having a Chinese name doesn't take away from their identities. It's very much about making just a little bit effort to be about another culture. And I feel like at the end of the day, it's all fusioning together in a good way. And for people who want to use their own names, I think if you're proud of your name, like if you don't mind that, if you have the patience to teach other people how to say your name, because I know that a lot of people, most people that we meet, whether you're a foreigner living in China or a Chinese person living in another country, you will meet nice people most of the time. And if they really want to learn your name, and if you just just use your name and you have the patience to teach them, I'm sure they will be willing to learn or do the best they can. Like, for example, I don't think a lot of people will be able to say like Xiaoxuan, not like that. But if you say Xiaoxuan, like I may be able to just understand that. When I was in the States, I wouldn't say my name is Alex Shi. I would say my name is Alex Shi, because like the SHI sound, I've been called Mr. Shy, Miss Should, Miss She, and I was like, okay, I guess she is the simplest way to say it. But after I came back, like my friends here, I remember I was doing comedy once and my friend Eric brought me on. Because he knew me as Alex. We never call each other by our full names. So when he brought me on, he was like, oh, next comedian, Alex, sure. I was like, oh, okay. I guess that, it works now. Like people are able to pronounce it very closely to what the actual sound is. So for me, I don't feel like that's a pillar move to have to reclaim your identity. If you're really proud, you can really ask people to call you by your own name, and it's okay. It doesn't have to be done in an angry.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she doesn't come off that way either. Her video is really just kind of playful. I do think, okay, this is really interesting. While you're talking, I'm thinking about, like, say your name is Javier and you move to America and they're like, oh, that's very difficult. Well, okay, Javier is having to learn English. Javier is having to learn about your entire culture, your entire history, you know, like all the context and how far to stand from someone in your culture. You can learn Javier.
How to say his name. Exactly.
Yeah, you can learn how to say his name.
You know, this actress, I don't know if you watched the show Orange is the New Black.
I've seen it. I haven't actually watched it.
There's a very well-written and well-performed character called Crazy Eye, Susan Crazy Eye. And the actress, her name is Uzo. Her real name is Uzo Amaka Abuda. That's an African name. So Abuda is her last name and Uzo Amaka is her first name. So like ever since a little child, like when she first went to school in the States, people are like, the kids, you know, kids are kids. Kids would be like, I don't know how to say your name. And she went home. She's like, Mom, kids don't know how to say my name. And her mom just said, why don't you teach them? And instead of saying anything, you know, so like she went back and taught people how to say her name. Until today, she still Uzo Amaka. And then in short, people call her Uzo. So, I mean, if you really try to help people out and like you said, if I have to learn your entire culture, your language to be here, then spend a little effort to learn a name. That's something that I take 99 steps, you take one, and we meet in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's talk about her again, Tatala. I hope I'm saying that right. She actually, this happened to her in primary school. So it wasn't an adventure for her as much as something that was foisted upon her. So it might be different for her than for like me, for example. When I finally decided to start learning Chinese, I was in my 30s. And it was like, hey, this is an exciting adventure that I've chosen to go on. And like, so I think it might be different for different people. I have a very good childhood friend. I'm not going to say his full name, but his mother, she was named by her parents with a boy's name. And she eventually changed her name to a girl's name because she was uncomfortable with the boy's name that her parents had given her. When I was friends with her son, I attempted to give him nicknames because it was just something to do, right? We were like 12 or 13 and we would give each other nicknames. She was so upset. And she was like, you can't call him anything but his real name. He didn't mind, but she minded because I think her experience with her personal identity as a young girl had affected her perception of what people are called matters. Yeah. And so I think for different people, we need to be sensitive to what they want to be called. So if you are cool with being called Alex, I'm okay with calling you Alex. If someone else is like, no, my name is, and they have some, you know, Indian name or Chinese name that they are very comfortable with, then I think that's what we should respect because people's identity is sensitive to them. Yeah. And if for us it's playful and other people it's sensitive, then we need to be playful with some and sensitive with others. I think
that is a very rule of thumb for a lot of the social issues nowadays, really. Like if it's about another person, whatever they want to be called, or you know, just respect the other person and instead of forcing other people to conform. If you feel like if it doesn't fit in what you think, like I think calling you Jiewen is easier, but calling you Jason is harder, so I'm just gonna go about what's easier for me.
I'm going to twist the topic for our last few minutes here and talk slightly about money. And I know this seems like it came out of nowhere. I like money too. If you have any extra, you could give it to me. Don't worry. So on Chinese money, the writing of minorities in China. So the ethnic minorities of China, their writing is represented on different parts of different bills in Chinese cash. Yeah. Which does not exist in America. No, people will immediately say, oh, there's Latin on it. It says, you know, Novus Ordo Seclorum, New World Order. But that is a dead language from Rome, and the Middle Ages among the clergy that is not like Spanish or French or some other large ethnic group that exists in the United States today. So I think that's really interesting that China made the choice to include their minorities' language on money. It goes back to what we're talking about, the language of identity now.
Yeah.
Because Chinese money represents the minorities in China, and in a way, it's part of the identity of the nation.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I guess it also goes back to what I thought when we learned that America is the melting pot as a kid. I was like, China is more of a melting pot. We have more ethnicities and they are all like individually who they are living here. And they're not, trying to be, they're not like, we speak Mandarin better than other people. That's not something that they're super proud of.
I mean, I don't think it's impossible. I think in the future, maybe America is changing. It's possible that America will eventually change its cash to include a little bit of Spanish or something else, because some of the symbolism on money only came around in the 1950s, actually. So before that, like the pyramid, for example, which is used for so many different conspiracy theories now, wasn't on the money, but it actually came much later in America's history. So I don't see that it can't change, that America can't begin to adapt, because I don't think that there is an official language in America. English is the national language, but not the official language. America doesn't have an official language. There's nothing preventing the United States from modifying its money to be more inclusive of the cultures of which it is, comprised.
Exactly. And it's only making spending money easier, more convenient for everybody who live in the United States.
I actually want to talk about the naming thing too, because I have been an English teacher here in China for about 10 years. And almost every, I want to change that. Every student I've ever had has had an English name or a name that parents thought was English foisted upon them. It was never me. And when I met some kids, I had some kids, they were like Ting Ting. I preferred to call them Ting Ting, but their mom was like, no, you must call them Tina. We've decided that this is Tina now. I'm actually talking about a real person. Sorry, Ting Ting. She's like 6. But I think it's really fun for the parents to like, oh, this is my daughter's English name. But, I think it's also not necessary. Like eventually the child can choose its own name or choose their own name. I had a girl. She was my student for a long time. She did choose her own names. She was obsessed with Disney princesses.
Oh, God.
And I was her teacher for 4 or 5 years. Go ahead, guess.
Her name is Ariel.
Her name, one of her names was Ariel. The reason I say one of is about every year she'd watch the newest Disney movie that her parents got her and change her name. She was Ariel, then she was Rapunzel,
oh my God.
Then she eventually became Elsa.
That's adorable.
I don't know what she's called today, but like she was constantly whatever princess she was identifying with became her new identity.
That's very adorable, I have to say. That's kind of cute.
Yeah, and her parents were totally cool with it. She'd just show up in a new dress and say, now I'm Rapunzel. Oh, okay, Rapunzel.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I changed my name into Veronica. I guess I could just every year change my name into the most popular network show.
Who's the most popular character in network television
right now? I don't even know. I still watch the old ones. I still watch Grey's Anatomy.
Well, there you go.
I'm not going to become Meredith.
All right, Alex. I was going to say, all right, Meredith, but we have already agreed to call each other by the names that we prefer. That is all the time we have for The Bridge, a show that connects East and West. Thank you so much for your time today, Alex.
Thank you, Jason. Always lovely talking to you.